the original Season 3, Episode 16, Alone with Everybody. And I think this was an interesting episode, the way it was paced, because it was very half fast-paced and then half kind of slow-paced, because of course we have, basically, I mean, they technically introduced kind of the arms race for the one White Oak bullet in the last episode, but this was like, alright, we have Vincent finding it at the end. I'm thinking like he's going to be like the king of all the characters right now because he's got the White Oak. Instantly this random new character gets introduced. We don't know what her deal is, who she's working for, and they do this whole crazy arms race and everything, all these bids and everything like that, and we get the beginning and end all done in one episode, technically 2 episodes since they introduced the idea, but we have all of that happening. And then the other side of the story is Haley and Klaus and Hope kind of on their first, day or so, first couple of days on the run, and we get to actually see what they're doing, which I thought was cool. We got to see, I think, a very interesting aspect of Haley's character in this, because we got a little bit of her kind of going back to the pack, which there isn't much of a pack anymore, but we get to meet the character Hollis, who she knew, and we find out that a young girl that she used to babysit is actually now 15, and she's killed someone and triggered the curse. And I actually liked that side of the episode. It was definitely the slower half, and I certainly, I'll be honest, I certainly enjoyed the other half a lot more. But I liked how they did that. I thought it was actually pretty cool. It was slow paced, but it showed their relationship, especially in the ending, because Klaus shows up, and he mentions, like, he left Hope with Hollis, and it's like, you trust him, so, excuse me, I trust you. So, these baby steps, and he's actually working to trust other characters, and he's, because it starts off early on, it's kind of exactly the same, where it's like, can't trust anybody, this is family, it's these couple of people, and that's it. So he's realizing, like, there are people within their family, like, they are literally extended family, and he has to learn that that is the case, because it can't just be the 2 of them, because sometimes they will be the targets, and if there's no one else that he feels they can trust, if there's no one else to trust, then they're just the targets and their baby's right next to him. So he's working through it, which I thought actually was fairly interesting. He's got to realize that they're on the run. They have to understand what resources they truly have, who is and is not an asset to them, and who is and is not trustworthy. So very small, very, very small thing, which he can easily flip on a dime and instantly go back to his old ways, and you know how it is. But I like that. I thought it was cool. It was a nice little moment with Haley and talking about, kind of the way of their people and helping this young girl. And then we find out that the lamb, I forgot the name of it, but basically just a great ending where it's like, oh, these people are still targeting werewolves, which we find out that, and I guess they never knew that. I guess they never saw that piece of paper, because I was thinking that they knew Lucien was involved with that, and I guess that never happened. I totally forgot that they never knew that. So I'm like, they're going to know it's Lucien, but as it went through, they're like, we've been worried so much about what's out there, but it's much closer to home. And then they have the scene, of course, where the ancients actually tell Vincent they want him to help Lucien. And I thought that was cool. I was like, okay, that's pretty freaking nuts. They want him to help, because whatever his plan is, it's going to kill at least one of the originals. And apparently we find out based on the promo, it's that his plan is to become an original, which I guess he'd need the White Oak, because the spell was based off of that specific tree. And I can't remember all the details, because they actually explained that in the Vampire Diaries like 3 seasons ago, exactly what the spell was. But it involves the tree, and that's why it's the only tree that can kill them and all that stuff. So he has that piece, and he can become an original, which I think is a great concept. I think that's actually very cool. They could turn someone into an original. It wouldn't be the first time, because technically we had that before in the Vampire Diaries. Of course, at this point, that character, he is now human again. But I think that's actually a great concept. It would make a villain character, he'd be able to stand toe-to-toe with the originals. And of course now it's like Lucien is the one that's in control of this. He still has them targeting wolves, which is still the big mystery right now. There's really no explanation as to how that would involve the curse. I mean, because for Klaus, like, they didn't become originals because of the werewolf vampire blend thing. That just happened to be Klaus. So I'm curious, of course, like, what the deal is with that, unless his plan is truly to become a hybrid And maybe there's something going on with that where maybe they aren't killing all of these werewolves. Maybe some of them they're taking or something crazy like that. I can't really guess at this point, but his plan to become an original so that he can stand toe to toe with them is very cool. I, of course, want the answers to why he'd want to do that, which it could easily be the simple answer. They all got brainwashed into thinking that they were the Michelsons and they were on the run for, I can't remember the exact amount of time, but it was like decades that they took the originals' places and their father was chasing them. And that could easily still be the case. He was like, I don't want Klaus dead and this and that. He's free. He and Marcel are totally free, and I mentioned before, Marcel, if he wants to, could kind of switch and be like, hey, let's, take down Klaus if he wanted to. And, that hasn't happened. He's still on their side and everything, but I guess in Lucien's case, he's done. Who knows who he wants to kill, to be totally honest, because he can easily kill Klaus now because he's free of him. He can kill Elijah because he was never sired to him, so he doesn't give a crap about that. And he's just been kind of playing the long game. Like he had an actual stake because of course he couldn't be like, oh, kill off Elijah or whatever, and no big deal. So he had to worry about that stuff, and he was playing the long game for sure. And I'm excited to see how it plays out. I'm very curious to see where they take things with this character because he's, come back into the fold, and he's gonna be, I don't know how many more episodes we really have, but seemingly he is going to be like the big villain now that they've gotten rid of Aurora and Tristan. Lucien is coming to, a bit of power, plus the Ancients want him to succeed because I'm assuming if he becomes an original, all he's going to do is kill both of them, or at least attempt to, and he has the Regent on his side, so he has a powerful witch on his side. He has, who knows how many other vampires. He has these, this human military land grabbing, resource group, however they're deemed, by the government or whatever. So he has them killing off werewolves. He has his people with, getting him the White Oak stick. So he's got that happening. It's in his hands. He, took out Freya, and I'm guessing his plan is to utilize her in conjunction with Vincent just to have a ton of magic. I guess that's why he needed her. Because obviously they could have just taken the bullet off of her and either left her there or flat out killed her, but they don't do that, so I'm not sure what the case is. And considering she was getting into a car, it might be a little easy for them to be like, hey, she never left because this is Freya's car, unless they decide to be like, oh, she maybe took a secret car or, took another car or whatever. But I'm very excited where they're taking things. I think this is actually a pretty fun episode to come back to after such a long break. Nice little rivalry between Cole and Finn in this episode as well. Cole definitely has some ill will towards his brother, but he also kind of confides in Elijah a little bit. Like, he forgot how bad the hunger was and the rage and just the heightened emotions. And I like that idea. He's really losing it. Of course, he wants to, maintain control because he actually cares about Davina. So he's trying to see how that plays out. Davina had an awesome moment in this episode when she used the spell and she actually locks Finn within his body. For one, when she was looking at the pages, I was like, that's a cool, magical key or whatever. So it looked really cool. And so he's, stuck in his body forever, so he can't go to the witch body and take off with Freya. So that's done. And then, if it weren't for that idea, him wanting to kind of live a normal life, I guess Lucien's plan totally would have failed. I guess, that was kind of his idea because he knew, kind of how the characters were going to end up reacting. So, it definitely worked out in his favor, for sure. But I really enjoyed it. I thought that was actually pretty cool. And they introduced a concept that they never really talk about, where, Finn, he jumps in and grabs the bullets. Like, we'd live forever. Like, that kind of sucks. Like, at some point, we'd want to be free of all this craziness, for sure. So, I thought it was cool. It was like, alright, they're introducing a concept that they never really talk about. And I actually like that idea. It was definitely last minute, but it came from the perfect character to where it makes perfect sense. Because he, the whole thing is like, he doesn't want to live forever. He doesn't want to be what he considers, an abomination, which he's always kind of had the same train of thought as his mother. And I like that. I was like, he grabbed the bullet, and it's like, no one should be, in his case, he thinks people would be doomed if they were to live forever. And for them, they really would. It's not like any other vampire where it's like, oh, you get hit in the heart with a piece of wood, you die. They could easily pull that off, like any other vampire could, but they're originals. And that's basically all there is to it. If they destroy the white oak, there's nothing that can kill them. They can be daggered, which is kind of the only way, I guess, it's kind of the weird sort of spiritual thing, I guess, in that sense, because it's like, well, if they're daggered, they're basically just asleep. But I thought that was cool. I was like, I like the idea that they have in introducing this sort of mental complexity that they've never really talked about. It's always just, we're surviving because we have so many freaking enemies and we want to save ourselves, we want to save our family members. And this is kind of, we choose now because we have it, and Frey offers the best, best of both worlds, really, where she can hide it because she's a witch. She can hide it under a million different spells until they want to utilize it to, as she put it, be free. So I thought that was great, and then of course, that completely falls apart because Lucien is the bad guy now. But I liked that. I thought that was a nice little twist at the end. Of course, everyone thinks everything's pretty cool. Marcel's like, we got it. You guys are good. You're protected. Everything's safe. All the, revenge-seeking people are just going to scatter because they got nothing now. And then, of course, he gets back and Josh is knocked unconscious. And, this woman who's in vervain ropes, completely free. And I thought it was interesting how they showed that, because I assumed when she was in ropes, they were just tied to vervain, or they were soaked in vervain. But the way they had it seemed like, if anything's just sitting in vervain, it could be a string and it'll still be, it's like it just absorbs the essence of vervain or something, because it was just like in a pot of vervain and then wrapped around her. So I thought that was kind of funny because that's something we've never seen. But I liked it. I thought it was a pretty cool episode. We'll, of course, have to see if Lucien's plan actually works or not. Of course, they go into Mystic Falls, so I don't know if it'll really be a crossover or anything like that. I'm sure there's got to be some mention where someone's going to be like, hey, they're in Mystic Falls, and we just have to wait and see what happens there. But I actually enjoyed this one. I think it was a good episode coming back from break. The slower side of things with Haley and the young girl and just her, sort of her idea of how she's had to leave behind what she was, so familiar with when she was younger. I actually enjoyed that. I thought it was a cool little peek into her past before she was even in, the Vampire Diaries. So I actually really enjoyed that. Of course, the fast-paced stuff was super awesome. It was like this new villain comes in. Who is she? Who does she work for? Who's the super big bad villain? Turns out to be Lucien, who this whole time was playing everybody. So he's got the bullet, based on the promo now we know. His plan is to become an original. The ancestors want him to become an original, which I'm assuming only means they know at least what his plan is. So they know if he's going to try to kill all the originals off, or at least Klaus or something, which I think even if it's only Klaus that he's trying to kill, I think they'd still do the same thing, because it's Klaus. He's kind of the worst of the worst. But I'm assuming based on what his plan is, he wants to take out all the originals. He wants to kill Klaus. He wants to kill Elijah. If not Klaus, he definitely wants to kill Elijah, because Elijah was the one that officially, kind of set them off as thinking, that they were the originals, and letting them go off being hunted by their father for who knows how long. Which I think I said decades before, but I think it was like centuries. I think they mentioned it was like at least 100 years or something crazy like that. But I don't know. It makes sense. And then if he's an original, in that case, especially because he knows both Cole and Finn are there, he'd be able to stand up to them as well. And they couldn't kill him. There would be nothing that they could kill him with. And I assume if he uses the bullet, it'll basically wipe it away. There won't be anything ever that could kill an original anymore, including himself. So all they'd be able to do is dagger him, which, when you have the ancestors and the regent, on your side, it's a little hard even for the originals to, kind of come at you. And we saw a really great moment from Vincent early on in the episode, when he was taking on all those vampires, because that first guy that ran up to him, he was a super sweet, and he still managed to get his hand up and, take that guy down. Two people grabbed him at once. He took both of them down. He took everyone down except for the main woman, and we do find out that that's because of the ancestors. And at first I thought it was some crazy thing because they're doing, stuff with the Vampire Diaries where they have people who are vampires as well as witches. And I thought that was a part of it at first. Like, oh, that's interesting. They kind of added a new I forgot what they call them, but you know they added a new one who's a vampire and a witch. But we find out it's just the ancestors. I thought it was either that or she was protected in some way, but I didn't think she was actually protected by the ancestors, of course, until it happens at the end. But definitely looking forward to it. Great way to come off a break and then lead into like just some madness, you know, with Lucien becoming, you know, the new villain and wanting to become an original. So I'm very excited for that, of course. Definitely want to know what you guys thought about this episode. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And of course, I have to ask, do you guys think that Lucien will become an original? Or will his mission fail and, you know, he'll get wiped out and the originals will... I mean, I'm assuming if he fails and they get the White Oak back, I'm assuming they'd actually destroy it regardless of what it would mean, because otherwise they'd just, you know, be targeted and they'd be killed off before they were ready. And it's kind of like, well, rather live forever than be killed off early, I guess. I mean, you know, you live for so long, who knows, you know, what path they decide to go down. But I don't know. It's hard to guess if he'll succeed or not, because if he does, then it's like, well, I mean, I guess they could still dagger him, and that would technically defeat him as the villain if they daggered him after he became an original. But I think even if he succeeds, and that's the thing I'm trying to, you know, figure out. I guess it was turned back to ash, because that was, you know, that was the whole thing with the trees, that it burned down and, you know, turned to ash. So I guess they technically still have like the tiniest bit of, you know, a couple of grains from that bullet after, even if the spell worked. But I don't know, it's hard to guess. I think that he will succeed, and then it'll just be some madness for, like, you know, in the last couple of episodes. But that's my guess. I definitely want to know yours. And of course, I definitely want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.